Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews, where this week we are in the same room as each other and can look into each other's eyes,
which we've never done for Rewind Reviews, have we? Yeah.
No, and we've also returned to the scene of a previous crime. I was sat in the very seat I sat in when I threw up on a podcast. Last year?
I can see it when I close my eyes. June.
Yeah, it was nearly a year ago.
Well, it would have been. We did it on the. Did we do it?
The Statics, yeah. So it was.
We did it. We literally do. Did we do it?
We did the Statics on the Friday night and then the Saturday morning.
Right. So it was
the Saturday afternoon.
Saturday afternoon. Yeah. So it wasn't immediately after, but it was. Yeah.
Yeah. We were too tired the night we did the Statics because that was like 4 hours.
And I was so drunk that I rewatched Tropic Thunder. We watched the entirety of Tropic Thunder. Well, I was panicking because there was a weird thing on my banking app.
So I was distracted. Your banking app. For 2 hours while I watched Tropic Thunder.
I was drunk and distracted, very much so. And Dan was more so because he'd thrown a lot of it up, as previously mentioned.
Yep.
I then, through the drunkenness, through the worry, ate an obscene amount of pizza, which my stomach can sometimes react to. Let me tell you, it reacted. And between all of that, said goodbye to Dan, got in the next day after saying goodbye to Dan, and was like, I'll just rewatch Tropic Thunder. I've rewatched it. So that weekend, I watched Tropic Thunder twice.
Yeah, but you don't remember the first time. No. My favourite part about it was we got towards the end of the movie and you were asking questions and like making comments as if something didn't make sense. I was like, but they literally just did a scene explain. Like I can't remember what it was, but there were certain things you were like, well, that doesn't make it. Where did he come from? I'm like, you literally just saw a scene of him travelling that, and you're like, oh, like because you'd missed so much.
Yeah, when he appears at the end.
Yeah. You're like, where did he come from? Anyway,
it's a good movie.
It is. Yeah, we'll come back to it maybe on this at some point.
Yeah, maybe.
Not anytime soon.
Not anytime soon. No. I've watched it twice in the last year.
Yeah, it's true. What we have today is Chris's previous choice, The Shawshank Redemption. It was an interesting choice because most of the stuff that people have been sort of predicting we'll do are like kids and family movies because obviously the era we've been mostly looking at, we were quite young. But Chris pointed out a very obvious gap in our in the types of movies we've been covering, which is, baby's first Oscar bait. So these movies that get a lot of award season attention, usually very dramatic, not normally like the most sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Here's a shiny thing movies to attract teenagers. Teenagers want the crash bangs and the wall ups. They want Marvel movies essentially. That's what they're looking for. Marvel movies or horror movies. So it was a perfect example. These sort of movies in your late teens sort of show up, don't they? And people start realizing, oh, cinema's a thing. Like actual, like genuine, not to detract from the Marvel movies of the world. There's a place for those switch off your brain, have fun with it movies, 100%. But at a certain age, you sort of grow out of those movies. And I just want to point out, Chris has made the fatal mistake he always makes on the podcast, which is he poured himself a full drink, down most of it before we started, and now he's got so little to work with for the rest of the podcast. I know how much trivia there is, Chris. We're buckling in for a long one.
I didn't even pee previously.
Oh dear.
So
we're in for a rough one. Anyway, so there's that point, isn't there, when sort of people start discovering movies that are a little bit maybe have more interesting themes or like a bit more dramatic. And
I think for some people there's a almost pretentious air to it. I've seen this movie.
Yeah, at a certain age that starts to become the cool thing, isn't it? That you've seen like actual movies.
I remember seeing Stand By Me, which I'm sure we'll do at some point.
Yes.
On a stool at a fete. And being like, wow, Stand By Me is very rare. I'm going to buy Stand By Me for 50 pence and watched it. Like went home, watched it, and felt a sense of like, oh, I'm a bit of a film guy. I remember when though, because as people know, I'm more of a TV guy, and I went to an interview for a film studies university course at Southampton. And the guy asked me who my favourite director was. And now I could give you all sorts of wanky answers. But back then, I literally went, Spielberg, because it was like one of the only directors I knew.
That's fair. To be fair, like it's the director of this film, Frank Darabont. His name has come in and out of my life in weird ways. Like I don't think I knew who directed this movie when I watched it when I was younger at all. No idea. And then his name flew back into my life through The Mist, one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Which is another Stephen King adaptation from him. It's incredible. It's just such a powerful piece, The Mist. Maybe that'll come up at some point. I love that movie.
I feel like we've sat down and watched The Mist.
Yeah, maybe. There's the black and white version that comes on the Blu-ray is the ultimate way to watch that movie because that's what Frank Darabont wanted to do.
Oh no, I'm thinking of the TV show.
Oh yeah,
we watched
that
the
for the
podcast.
podcast. No, that wasn't very good. No, The Mist was Frank Darabont's like what he wanted to do. It was a perfect combination because Frank Darabont had done horror sequels through like the 80s and 90s. That's what his career had been. He'd done like The Fly 2 and a bunch of other stuff in that vein. And I'm trying to remember what the other ones he did. He did like a Nightmare on Elm Street film. I think he did the third Nightmare on Elm Street film or something like that. So he was a horror guy. And then when he finally got to do a Stephen King one, he went for a drama, which I thought was really interesting. And then finally he got to spread his love for Stephen King and his horror chops. And it all kind of came together for The Mist. He got a bit screwed over by the studio. He shot it to do it in black and white. So it was all shot with color, with the intention of seeping all the color out. And then the studio got nervous and didn't let him do it. And the final version has color, but it doesn't look right because it wasn't really shot lit for color. Yeah. So he then got to, on the Blu-ray, do a black and white version, which is what he intended.
Oh, nice.
And it's fucking brilliant.
Oh,
it's
awesome.
incredible.
So what were your memories of watching this?
So this is what's interesting about this, because when I saw this one, I had no idea who directed it. It was only years later that Frank Darabont's name came up through The Mist and then through Walking Dead, famously fired from after the first season of Walking Dead, but got to establish the entire tone of that show. So this came to me just as that exact thing, recommendation through people who were starting to get into sort of like for lack of a better term, like proper cinema, like more artistic cinema, like stuff with a bit more creativity, not creativity, a bit more merit maybe in terms of like themes and like in artistic intent, rather than something that just exists to entertain. So it was recommended to me by someone, I think high school or something, like someone was talking about it and was like, "Oh, you should absolutely see this Shawshank." And I rented it out from a Blockbuster, from an actual Blockbuster, and loved it. I remember really enjoying it. But it's one of those films, and there's a few of them, and I've seen a few of them this year too. Do you know those films you get and you watch them and they're really good, and you just go, "I don't need to see that really ever again."
Oh wow! I think I watched it. I'm pretty sure
it was such a good experience. I was just like, I'm done. Like that's cool. Like
I'm pretty.
But I did see it again though.
Yeah,
I saw it in uni again.
Did you watch it?
I watched it when we were at uni. Yeah,
it will no doubt come back to the script. But because we both did script writing at uni, I'm pretty sure, and my then girlfriend's mum had it on video or had rented it on video or something like that. And my girlfriend was like, "We should watch this." And I remember looking at the cover and being like, "Yeah, okay, fine," and being captivated and loving it. And then getting it on, there was a 3-disc DVD set, which will still be at my mum and dad's. For some reason, I'm pretty sure if we went to my mum,
did they split the movie in two? Why is it 3 discs?
No, I can't remember what content is on all 3 discs. But if we go to my mum and dad's, I don't know why, but I'm pretty sure I've got 2 copies of that 3-disc DVD set of The Shawshank Redemption, and no idea why.
Amazing.
I own it twice.
At least it's a film you like, whereas I currently have 2 copies of Fat Boy Run.
One of my
favorite movie.
One of my favorite things about your house.
It's. Should I quickly explain so that doesn't sound insane? I've got 2 copies of a DVD of a film I hate. What happened was we borrowed it from a friend. I watched it, hated it, but we accidentally broke the plastic casing of it. So we bought a replacement copy, which she didn't care about and never picked up. So now I own 2 copies of Run Fat Boy Run. One cracked, the case, but the disc is fine, and one still in the cellophane.
I've not started it yet, but you're going to own a lot more, because I'm going to start sneaking in copies of Run Fat Boy Run into your DVD collection.
Yeah, because let's be honest, at this point, that's probably about 10p a copy.
I can pick it up, I'm not worried about the cost of doing that.
If you're really clever, what you do, don't put them in at the same place, because the 2 are currently together. You start slipping them in different parts of the rack.
It would be foolish, because you'll notice like 5 Run Fat Boy Runs.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
No, it's fine.
So you've got 2 copies of Shawshank.
Got it on DVD for like Christmas or some shit like that. Like I think when that set came out, and watched it again, I remember watching it with my mum and dad and being like, "We should watch this," and they were like, "All right." And then I've not watched it for a while until last night.
Yeah, it just for me, there's a certain sort of film that I just feel like the enjoyment that I get out of it would fade drastically on a repeat viewings if there's not a decent amount of time put between them. And I mean years we're talking. So that's the reason I was quite happy to rewatch it this time, because I think I've seen this is probably my 3rd viewing in my life. The first time was very young, very teenager. Second time was like at uni, another sort of 5-10 years after that, and then again we've sort of had another gap like that. It's like I saw Little Women over Christmas. That was and I really loved it. I absolutely loved that film. I thought it was really wonderful. I would not watch it again.
Yeah, I don't know if it's maybe the experience of it, but I know if I had a decent TV, I'd watch 1917 again. But it's that kind of thing. Of
1917 is another one.
If 1917 wasn't shot like that, I wouldn't watch it again. And I still would have enjoyed it.
As because it was shot like that, I think the magic of that will wear off on a second viewing. So I don't think I'll watch that
Certainly
a second time either.
Screen it will.
Yeah. So
and interestingly,
that's quite a theme with me.
This may surprise you, and I know we briefly talked about the film last time, so let's not go down a hole on it. I'd be okay with probably not really seeing Joker again.
Yeah, Joker I saw the once, wouldn't see it again. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's an incredible
Falls into the same category. Falls into the same category. Like, enjoyed it. You know what I think it is sometimes? I mean, with Joker particularly, it's the lack of any actual depth.
Joker, I don't want to go down a Joker hole.
But Joker is the illusion of depth. Like, it's all about society, man.
Isn't it?
Like, but it's not really. It's about it's a really great performance about a guy losing his mind and like and the story of how like society kind of pushed him that way. But it's not an indictment. Like, it's not a legitimate social commentary. If you want a legitimate social, go watch Parasite.
Isn't it funny though how a lot of dramas like there's
Parasite I would watch again immediately.
And
I would watch Parasite tomorrow.
I've not seen Parasite, but the original Old Boy I'd watch again.
Yeah, great film. Immediately.
I'm not comparing the two just because they're both subtitled.
What's the quality then? I don't understand. What is the quality between?
I think
that separates Parasite, which I would absolutely see. I feel like you could show me that 4 or 5 times this year and I still wouldn't get bored of it. Or Little Women, which I love, maybe not equally, but really did enjoy. But once I'd finished, I was satisfied. I just went, like a really good meal. You go, I wouldn't have that. It was
weird.
It was this perfect little package, and I'm happy to have had it when I had it, and I don't need to go back to it.
Because I think there's something in the fact that it's. I know both those examples are dramas fundamentally, but like I think comedy's a lot more rewatchable, which is weird.
Yeah.
Because you might not laugh so hard at the jokes a second time. I tell you one film, I wouldn't watch Joker again. I'll tell you one film that I would watch again tonight. Blockers. You seen Blockers?
No.
You should see Blockers. We may watch Blockers tonight. I'm not sure Jess would be up for watching it again.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Blockers is hilarious.
I will take your word for it.
This film.
So with this film, let's talk about this film. So I sit down to watch Shawshank, and it's funny. Can I tell you a little story about yesterday? So I had a really busy couple of days.
Because we need to flesh this out. Do it.
Yeah, because we're already wasting so much time. But no, but this. So my plan was to watch it yesterday morning.
Yeah.
The night before, I worked until like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And then so I didn't get home till 2. And then I had to go to work in the afternoon and then do another shift till 1 a.m. and then to come here first thing this morning. So the only chance I could watch this film was early yesterday morning, having just finished a shift only 6 hours before. So I wake up having only had 5 hours sleep to fit in this film. And the day before, someone said, "What are you doing tomorrow morning before you go to work?" I'm like, "I'm going to have to watch Shawshank." And like, there was a resistance to it because I knew how long Shawshank was, right? So I sit down and I watch the movie and I just finish and then I go, I need to do all my research for the Triv. So I start doing all the research. I spend another hour doing research for Triv. Then I get a message from Chris. "We're still doing Shawshank tomorrow, right?" And inside, you fucking better.
I was just double checking. Yeah.
In that moment, I nearly killed you. But you know what's funny is I sat down really, not dreading the experience because I knew it was a good movie and I knew I'd enjoyed it. But there was a part of me that was like, this may feel like a slog because it's 2.5 hours of a movie I've already seen. How much is there left for me to plumb from the depths of this movie? How recently did I see it? Uni, all right, it's a fair while back now, uni. Probably won't be too bad, but it is 2.5 hours long. Yeah. So this might be a slog. I tell you what a joy.
Yeah, I had exactly the same thing.
What a sheer... You do not feel that 2.5 hours.
No, not
if you'd have told me it was an hour and 40, I'd have been, maybe, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so similar thing. I'd had a really long, crappy week, and there was a sense of, when everyone's like, Friday, cool. And I was like, but my Friday is watching Shawshank Redemption. And it was just like I needed fluff. I needed fluff. I needed like lock and key, or do you know what I mean?
Yes,
like,
yes.
And I made the mistake of like, I was like, right, I was late, and then I was like, I'll get a quick tea, but also I'm cooking, so I want to make something nice. Yeah, right. Well, I'll come to that. She didn't make it through the whole thing. she was
Really?
because she was knackered, and we didn't start till like 9.
You didn't start the movie till 9?
No, yeah, I know, it was ridiculous. Because I
That's
was like, I'll make a quick
insane.
tea. So I was like, I'll do enchiladas, because in my head I was picturing putting the enchiladas in the oven, them cooking, and then they're done. But I wasn't picturing the fucking stages of making enchiladas. So it took me I'm there with the chicken, like, oh shit, this is going to be a longer process.
I've just got to tell you guys, the hand gesture Chris
Yeah,
just
it was
did.
my cooking chicken mind.
I mean, it looked like you were doing
And
something
then-
very different.
Well, then I didn't want to. Then I was like, I don't want to. Shawshank isn't an enchiladas film, so we watched an episode.
Put that on a poster. Not an enchiladas film.
It's not. So
No,
I
of
was like,
course it's
right.
not.
So we watched Intelligence. We watched.
It's weird. I agree with you, but I shouldn't.
I know.
On the surface, that sentence makes absolutely no sense.
Well, Shawshank isn't an enchiladas
Not an enchiladas
movie.
movie, but it's 100% true.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that's true.
So we watched an episode of Intelligence. Very
While you
much some
Enchiladas TV.
Enchiladas
Yeah,
TV.
perfect.
And then I had a shower. And then it's like 9.
That's not the time to
9:15.
have a shower, you dickhead.
I know. So Jess drifted. Bless her. And I didn't finish the movie till like 11:30, quarter
Amazing.
12.
Has she seen it before?
Yeah, she's seen it before.
okay.
Yeah, so she was like, if I fall asleep during I think, to be fair, if she hadn't seen it before, I think she probably would have stayed awake. But she was like, I've seen Shawshank. Like, because like there was, I don't know how well she remembered it, because she was a point where she just went, it's under the poster, isn't it? And I went, what is? And she was like, the tunnel. I was like, yeah.
That's my fundamental question about this film, I think, is has pop culture ruined this movie for future generations?
Oh, potentially.
Because if someone watching it now,
Yeah.
who's never seen it before,
yeah.
who's watched any parody of this, which they may not have even realised was a parody of this, how many things have you seen? I think back to that Community episode, particularly the Thanksgiving one, where they're tunneling out from a Thanksgiving dinner they don't want to do, and it's a poster on the wall, and they even recreate the shot where they throw something at the poster and it goes through, which gives them the hint that it's under the poster. They recreate all of that. There's no way you don't know it's under the poster in a modern context.
And it's
a bit like how you probably can't watch The Sixth Sense anymore, knowing
completely.
that Bruce Willis is a ghost.
Yeah.
Not to spoilers.
Yeah, and spoilers for this. And I just very quick, so completely back up your again. Obviously, we're spoiling this movie.
Yeah,
Brooke dies, and I'm like, fucking hell, a bit early for Brooke. I don't remember Brooke dying so early. And I look at my watch, I'm like, oh, it's not that early. Like, this film just
breezes
by. It was a pleasure to watch.
Wonderful.
The
strength being the writing, I think, but we'll come back to that.
Because the writing, so here's what's so impressive about the writing. And I remember the first time, you like when you watch it knowing where it's going, the clues are just abundantly there. Except one big one that I would question, which we'll come back to, because I hate that. Like, I hate that this podcast means we have to think like, well, okay, what would I question? What would I?
Yeah, what wouldn't work? Yeah, what doesn't work?
And I'll come back to that because a lot of people have comments about the tunnel concept. We'll come back to that.
In the book, he gets a second little pickaxe.
That's good.
He, like halfway through, like 10 years in, he asks Red for another one. Because he wore the first one down to a nub.
Because the book's tiny though, isn't it? The book like really short.
It's a novella. It's longer than a short story, but shorter than a novel.
Yeah. The writing,
Yes.
it is what is so impressive. Is no scene is wasted.
None.
And that's good writing in general. But what I mean by that is, it's not just like there's no scene in this movie where Red and Andy are bonding. There's no scene where the entire purpose is these guys are pals. You get those scenes, but those scenes are embedded with stuff about the characters or the story or like, do you know what I mean? There's no oh, we need to show this. They find ways to show things in other ways. But I was like watching it like, fuck me, every scene is vital. Like, and every scene, and it's a benefit.
It's not
of
just
the
vital;
format.
it's about engaging as well.
Yeah,
like it's one thing to make it essential to the plot, so you're already drawing your audience in just by being engaging because you're like, oh, I want to know where this is going. What's happening to these characters? I care about these characters. But it's written in a way where in every scene you're being drawn in just by their chat, their banter, because you learn to love the characters very quickly.
Yeah,
and therefore each scene becomes engaging because you're just enamored with seeing these people interact more. And that's what makes it breezy. Simple scenes where it's like, okay, the functional purpose of this scene is he's asking Red for a rock, for the rock or the little pick, the little rock hammer thing. Yeah. And you're like, so that's all that scene needs to be, right? But it's also their first interaction, and it's a bit playful, but it's also you're not 100% sure about Red yet. You don't know how serious of a threat Red might be if he like screws him over. You don't know what his plan. Well,
you're not sure on Andy. Like the opening, the opening, is so clever because it sets up a scenario where you don't know whether he did it or not.
Oh, we should recap the plot, right?
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, and by the way, I'm sorry, but if you don't, please just pause this and go watch the movie. You do owe it to yourself to do that. Like, I'm going to make it very clear now we're recommending this movie. And you should already know that it's a great movie. And you should have already seen it. But if you haven't...
And guessed we would recommend Shawshank Redemption.
Please go watch it before you listen to this. But for those who just want a little quick recap of the basic premise, because you haven't seen it in a few years or whatever, Andy Dufresne... we see him with a gun outside of a house, and then we see him basically we cut straight to the courtroom.
We intersperse between the courtroom and his wife and her lover making the sex. So the implication is that he, in a passionate rage fit of insanity, just went in and shot the wife and the lover. In the courtroom scene, he denies it completely, vehemently, and the very frustrating idea that he actually threw his gun away, which makes him seem all the more suspicious. Great line where the guy goes, basically he threw his gun away so they haven't found the gun, and the guy goes, bit of a coincidence. No, he says, quite convenient, isn't it? And Andy goes, well, as an innocent man, I actually find it quite inconvenient.
Yeah, as an innocent man who'd be proved innocent by that gun, I find that quite inconvenient, because obviously the ballistics would verify it wasn't his gun if the gun could be recovered. So he goes to prison, basically, and you do, as the audience, you do not know if he did it or not. And basically, it's the story of him spending essentially 20 years in prison. And for a lot of the movie, you're not sure. There's pieces moving that you can't tell what they're intending to be, and that's another thing that draws you in. It's a very clever script structurally, but the basic premise is secretly, and not even to the audience's knowledge, he's been planning an escape the entire time. It's a big reveal at the end.
And the reason the reveal is so... Because people might be thinking, oh, well, you could get a lot... The Great Escape is an example of the suspense being, are they going to get caught? But here, the suspense is, before he escapes, it's made to look like he's about to kill himself.
Well, it's a movie about a man surviving prison until that moment. That's what's so brilliant about it. So that is the movie. It's him trying to survive prison, trying to get by... finding ways to improve the prison, but also try to keep everyone on side, trying to avoid prison violence and just get by. And that in itself is a wonderful movie. But there are all these brilliant little clues all the way throughout that he's planning something better. And what's even cleverer about it is you, the audience, do not know he's innocent to start with.
Yeah.
You find that out much later. Because even you go, really? Because what they do is really clever. Normally in a movie, if someone says they're innocent, they mean it. If the main character says they're innocent, it's true. And you just take it as given. What's brilliant about Shawshank is they have this great premise of, oh, don't you know? We're all innocent in prison.
Yeah, apart from Red, who admits what he did.
So, which is very different in the book, by the way. I can't wait to get to the truth of that. That's something.
Okay.
Wait till we get to it. But what's wonderful about it for me, or what I really enjoyed about it, was like it's doing so much subtly. And normally you'd go, wait a minute, you've got a movie about a man where you don't know if he actually did it or not, and you don't find that out towards the end, and he's secretly escaping. You don't find that out towards the end. What the fuck is your middle act? What's happening in your movie?
Yeah.
There's this whole insane movie just about a man surviving prison that on its own would be wonderful. This script is nearly perfect. I think it's perfect. It's one of the tightest scripts I've ever read, one of the most engaging scripts I've ever read.
The dialogue is phenomenal.
Stunning.
As I messaged you last night, my favourite line is just basically Andy. It has already been set up that Andy wants some rocks to make a chess set. But
which
none
is
of
a very clever thing, because then you
gives him a reason.
Because then you dismiss the little rock hammer thing,
and we see his collection of chess pieces and other things he's carving built throughout. So that's what you think he's using it for.
Yeah, it's very clever.
And he says, but the other characters don't. No one knows this but Red. So there's a scene where Andy's been beaten up, very dramatic scene. And he's coming out the infirmary, and Red just goes to the other characters. Man likes to play chess. let's get him some rocks. And the reaction, the acting, the line, is just perfect.
This is a culmination of everything being on point. Roger Deakins, cinematographer. Speaking of 1917, one of his first nominations for an Oscar. It took him another bloody 20 years to win it. He actually came through my work recently, and apparently the nicest dude.
He's his work's phenomenal.
Yeah, he's apparently, but really humble though. Made a real effort to run. Apparently, he's lovely. Wow. So that's it's always nice to hear that these people who are talented are also nice.
Yeah, definitely.
So often the story is talented but a prick. So the cinematography is just wonderful throughout.
Yeah, it's
Frank
great.
Darabont, who's first time director here, really knew how to tell his story.
Yeah.
He also wrote a wonderful script. The actors were perfectly cast, and then they all deliver. Tim Robbins, Morgan Freeman, even all the supplemental cast that fill out the prison.
Brilliant, yeah.
Wonderful. And you think at any point it's like one bad choice in production away from being a mess.
Yeah.
The wrong casting choice could have fucked it.
Yeah, completely.
Or really hurt it.
The wrong background characters could have fucked it.
A missed beat in the story, or maybe a slightly flabbier story, could have fucked it. Very interesting. I'll slip some trivia in here. Frank Darabont has actually refused to release any deleted scenes for this movie.
Oh, wow.
Because he believes that what he deleted for a reason, and it's gone. And it's kind of like he felt like what he
can't.
What's on
that 3-disc DVD set?
I have no idea. Documentaries, I guess, and interviews.
Look it up,
But legitimately, that I think that's I think that's a real testament to that he understood how to tighten up his movie.
Yeah.
He understood what was needed and what wasn't to tell his story.
Well,
and it's just a culmination of everything firing on all cylinders.
It's things like I said about they really structured it so that it's things like there's an extra character later on who reveals that Andy's innocent, and then that character has a tragic end. But that tragic end is not just a tragic end. It's a tragic end that then makes the villain, the warden, more villainous and more spiteful.
Well, because before that, he just seems like he's an obstacle. He's not really. You understand his intent. You go, he's not a bad guy. He's looking out for himself,
doing
but he's
job.
He's not he's not a monster.
Yeah.
Then he's a monster.
Then he's an absolute monster.
It's so sudden that change. Yeah.
And the other guy's a monster as well. And Brooke's death is again another tragic scene, but it serves a purpose. It makes you wonder what's going to happen to Red. It says something about prison. It's
the tragedy that opens the movie. Well, I'll say opens the movie. That opens the prison section of the movie when with the character's literally just called fat guy or something like that.
Oh yeah.
That's horrendous.
That awful.
What a brilliant script move to say. Well, you know what? Let's establish this isn't, because later in the movie there are plenty of scenes you could argue could make prison seemingly quite a comfortable, straightforward lifestyle.
If you've got Andy Dufresne.
Well, no, but he improves things obviously massively. But even earlier in the movie, before he's made those improvements, they get to watch movies and they get a bit they do a bit of work. It doesn't seem like if you don't put that scene in the early bits,
that's fair.
I think there's a danger of the movie not having as much tension.
Yeah,
because it could feel gratuitous. I could think somebody watching that and going, wow. That opening section where he arrives at the prison is totally gratuitous. They strip them down, they blast them with hoses, they throw all this talc about them, and then they beat the shit out of them. It's really brutal, this opening, and it's oh, do you need that? Yeah, I think you do. Yeah. Because what follows that is a bunch of people guys just in a yard throwing a ball back and forth.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Talking, they go and eat meals, they do a bit of work on the roof.
Yeah,
and their circumstances start to improve because of Dufresne after that.
Yeah, I think that's why as well. The story of the violence, which again you could argue is gratuitous.
You could. I would disagree. I would disagree with that person.
No, I know.
Someone could argue that.
Again, that sets up prison. And the other thing that first scene did that I thought was so clever was, in the prison there are kind of good guys and bad guys. The guys Andy's friends with are the good guys. And then the bad guys are characters referred to as the sisters, who are violently attacking people and sexually abusing them. What they do that I was so, and again it's the writing and the cinematography. there's a scene where they're making bets on who the first one to cry is going to be.
Yes.
And the guy who bets the money on the guy he describes as fat ass,
Fat ass, that might be
he provokes him into crying and breaking down. But then when the guy won't stop crying and breaking down, the dude goes, just stop, man. Like, and
he
then
knows.
He
knows what's about
coming,
to happen.
which is that the guy gets beaten to death. And
But the guards, in an attempt to sort of straighten him and the other new prisoners out as a show of force, beat him, and then obviously it sadly ends in his death. I don't think that was their intention. You don't get the impression. You don't get the impression they were like trying to kill a prisoner.
Yeah, the doctor had gone home. He got stuck in the
he got beat up at night. There wasn't a doctor to immediately tend to his wounds, and he passed away.
But
still,
in that one look, you don't spend the rest of the movie hating that guy and viewing that guy as a villain, even though he's responsible for that dude's death. Because in one look and reaction, you see his guilt, and when he finds out he died, you see, he even says, "I owe that guy a smoke. Is he coming back?" Like, and his anger at the death and anguish, and it's
so clever because you could have made
that
that character a villainous character, but giving him that remorse, you are immediately affectionate for that character.
Yeah.
You do, and you shouldn't be because he caused the death. But like at the same time, you do feel for him because you see how much he sincerely, and again, great performance selling that.
So let's do one thing I found interesting that I'd never thought of before. So there's a lot of talk that I've heard sometimes is the notion of him being able to tunnel that far with that device, and B, I've heard a lot of people go, "Oh, what? Like he wouldn't get moved cells? It's a prison, all that sort of stuff." Actually, watching this back, I didn't find the moving cell thing an issue because actually there's even a line of dialogue which says, "You've got it really cushy in here. I'll get rid of your library. I'll get rid of your nice corner cell because presumably it's quieter." I guess that's why that's considered a perk.
It's worth clarifying here because we haven't mentioned this so far. So everyone's missing plot details. He helps a lot of the prison guards and warden out because he used to be a banker, so he helps them with their taxes and and a bunch of stuff. So he starts getting benefits out of that, such as being able to keep his cell, such as being able to work in the library, which is like one of the cushier jobs, like things like that. So you're right, the moving cell thing is absolutely covered.
Yeah, I don't think that's the thing, and they make it clear. He tunnels. He doesn't actually. He tunnels into an area of he's still kind of in the walls. It's just in the area with the piping. Like he doesn't tunnel his way out of the entire prison. He tunnels down a bit to get into the sewage pipe, basically.
And there's a really important visual and line from the end of the movie when they're explaining how he got out.
Yeah,
where he was just carving his name into the and it crumbles away.
Yes,
and he really describes it as saying like, "Oh, time, pressure, rock." Like they even says, knowing a bit about geology, and you see him looking at the fine stone that's crumbled away from what he's just done, and you. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's Tim Robbins. Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't think any of that. I partly when it began thought, "Oh God, is it going to be a discussion point? Is everyone going to be right? Am I going to be like, yeah, the logic is slightly flawed?" I don't think the logic is flawed.
No, I don't
that element. The only area, and I've come up with an explanation of it. The only area connected to it that I hit upon this time was the scene later on. When another character who, as reference, has that, I think the character's called Tommy, has a really tragic end, comes in and reveals that he's got evidence that Andy is innocent. And Andy's reaction to that is to go to the warden and yell about his innocence and, suggest that this is enough evidence to get him out of prison.
Which isn't, though. It's all very speculative.
It's all very speculative. It actually isn't. And then he gets put in the hold for, 2 months, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. But afterwards, I was like... But the second he leaves and they take that, he started at this point. The second they remove that poster, he's fucked. Because they'll realise he's been tunnelling. Yeah. They'll realise he's been trying to escape. They'll either beat the shit out of him or they'll get him on damage to property or some shit like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if a court would go, oh, well, you are innocent, so don't worry that you were trying to escape from prison because you're actually an innocent man. It's fine. Like, his...
Yeah.
He would be fucked if there's no good scenario, because if that had gone through, he wouldn't be allowed to just walk out when they discovered.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, though, when he's first doing it, though, he doesn't think there's any chance of himself getting free. So he does that for 18, 19 years, and then the guy comes in with potentially evidence. He brings it to the warden, and it's immediately shot down, and he's back to, okay, I'm not getting out of here any legal way.
Yeah, but I think he's already tunneled. For me, my interpretation was that he'd been tunneling for ages by that point.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so the tunnel would still get revealed.
Yeah,
even if he got out.
Yeah, but that's something you wouldn't not try though.
I don't know.
If you were already in the middle of tunneling and you've done it for 18, 19 years, and then this guy comes in and says you might be innocent, you still wouldn't you wouldn't not speak to the warden about that evidence.
But the fact that he's been tunneling means the best case scenario is the tunnel. It ends in the tunnel getting revealed and him getting fucked over for that.
Even if they fuck him over for that and they get him, because what damage of property? What's that going to get you? He's in there for 2 life sentences.
Well, I think they'd beat the shit out of him because they realised. But to be fair, the other explanation is, and that I then kind of went, because by the way, this isn't. This is just. It's. I think in all these we should. You know what I mean? This is addressing. It's not me saying it is a plot hole. It's me going, isn't it interesting? Because I don't think the interpretation most people give is.
I don't see that one as a plot hole at all.
No, I'm not saying it is. But I think also the movie gives an explanation, because in that moment where Andy is yelling at the warden and dragged away into the hold, he is more animated and edgy and on. You know, he's more. His emotions are the most heightened we ever see them in the film. So you can, if you can make some argument of what I was just saying, all of that goes at the idea that there's evidence. And he's like, what the... And do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
He's not thinking straight.
He's
anyway.
reacting to it.
Yeah, he's reacting to that
as you
news.
would, though. I think if you suddenly found out you could potentially be freed.
Yeah, definitely.
You jump.
I love, as he's getting dragged away, he's yelling, it's my life, it's my life. And it's just a beautiful scene.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, what scenes aren't?
And the escape when you see it all and you realise all the pieces and stuff.
It's really well done.
Great.
Because that comes back to my question, because I don't think we fully answered it. Does pop culture ruin this movie for the next generation?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
you think so?
Not as much as The Sixth Sense, because I think I've seen the Community. There's a Family Guy parody, I think.
Yeah.
But I've never heard anyone go, oh, we're tunnel like Andy Dufresne in Shawshank, whereas I've heard, I see dead people all the time. And I think, and that kind of...
Oh, when people talk about spoilers or
spoilers,
twists.
and that Bruce Willis is a ghost, do you know what I mean?
It's the go-to twist people talk about.
Yeah, I think not as much as The Sixth Sense, or, to be honest, Saw, maybe even as well.
Do you think there's any chance, though, that anybody would watch this movie and be surprised by it still?
If they know nothing, I think they might do, because it really is subtle. And like you say, they give an explanation for the Rock.
No, they do.
They give an explanation for the posters.
And in its day, I'm sure that worked wonderfully, because it was the first time anyone had covered it.
And it's only when you watch it you realise that, the scene where he rushes in and asks Red for Rita Hayworth is immediately after he begins to carve his name.
Yeah.
And afterwards, you realise that's because the Rock's come away, he's realised. But again, I didn't notice until this viewing. He runs into the film, sits down, asks for Rita Hayworth, and then buggers off again.
Yeah.
It's literally a reaction of, maybe it'll be a poster,
There's a couple of scenes that are actually enhanced on a second viewing, particularly the tension of the Bible scene. So there's a scene early in the movie.
Yes.
Well, not early, halfway through, let's say, where the warden comes to toss Andy's cell.
Yeah.
Mostly as an excuse to talk to him about his taxes, I think, but they're still tossing his cell.
They're getting the gauge of him to see if because he says something like the Red's voiceover, which we need to talk about as well, I think, says, he was trying to assess him. He was trying to work out whether he could do this.
So... yeah, so the warden comes in and he's got his Bible. And if you don't know the ending of the movie yet, which is that you reveal that the whole time he was hiding his little rock hammer,
which is amazing because how did the guards think he was chiseling down all these rocks? But anyway,
that's a good point.
But anyway,
yeah. Yeah, because I think what I assumed was... Actually, I think this is probably part of the cleverness of the movie. Because they say, there's a couple of things you could consider contraband, but nothing major.
Yeah.
So I assumed they'd found...
They think the rocks were brought in as contraband.
And I thought not just the rocks, but the rock hammer. I thought they'd actually found the rock hammer.
I think it's sanding paper.
No. You see the sanding paper, for definite. But when they say, a few things that you might consider contraband...
if you don't know the ending, you think...
The first time I watched it, before I knew the rock hammer was in the Bible, the reason I didn't go, how didn't they find the rock hammer?
Is because of that,
It's because I just went, they must have found it and not been too fussed by it because they knew he was using it for his stupid chess set.
Yeah.
So that's how you dismiss it if you're the initial viewer and you're not... And so that's quite clever. But it's in that Bible. So the second time or the third time you watch it, like, when he takes the book and he's holding it and you're like, oh... God, I know it's in there now. It's like, and even though I know he obviously keeps it, it still is very tense.
Yeah, it adds a whole layer. That whole scene is completely different.
And his performance,
he even points at the poster.
Yeah, he points to the poster and he holds the Bible, and then there's that moment where he looks like he's going to walk off with it, and the performance that Tim Robbins gives betrays him a little bit, but not so much that an audience would guess the Bible had significance.
No.
If you're watching it a first time.
Yeah.
But if you're watching it a second time, there's this little glint in his eye. You go, shit, he knows. He's like really tense right now. And it's so perfect.
It's great.
What a great thing. Let's talk about the narration. Sorry, did you have something to add to
No. Well, I was going to go on to the narration because what struck me as well, like watching it that I'd never thought before, is like structurally, it's so... Jess is coming in now. She better be quiet. God.
Oh, she can be on the podcast.
She won't. She will not want to be on the podcast.
She can tell us all about the first half of Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah. Jess is here. She can tell us about the first 5 minutes of Shawshank Redemption.
I can tell you more than that.
Hello.
We are still recording, just so you know.
I figured that's why we're both still sat in front of microphones.
No, this is just how Dan and I like to talk to each other.
It's the only way we know how to communicate anymore.
Together. You alright? Cool.
So
I was so struck by it's a film because you think of the film as being narrated by Morgan Freeman, which it is, but not until Morgan Freeman's introduced. Like the introduction, I was like, I've never seen it before. Usually, when films are narrated, they're narrated from the very beginning, almost over the titles, and then when Morgan Freeman starts, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, like he doesn't do the whole. I know it's only like a 5-minute scene, but I just thought that was really interesting. I'd never seen that.
I wonder
before.
if that's an accident of the adaptation from the book, because I think the book is supposed to be like
all red
writing it, like he's recounting what happened. So I think that, but he obviously, when Frank Darabont decided to do the film version, he wanted to add the scenes at the beginning with Andy Dufresne.
Put a bit of sex in there.
Sure, bit of sex. Why not? Man holding a gun.
Yeah.
The courtroom scene.
And the sex is what I was referring to, but.
Yeah, I said the sex and man.
Oh, right, sorry. I thought you were classing man holding a gun as sexy. You were like, yeah, the sexiness of that man holding that gun.
I'm afraid not, Chris. As much as you'd like to think I have weird sexual deviancies, sadly, I'm quite boring in that sense.
You've got the beard of a man who loves guns.
Got the beard of a man who needs to shave his beard.
It's a good looking beard. It's hefty.
It's getting some heft. I'm trimming it down for your wedding, Chris.
That's all right. If anything,
we're getting it all neatened up and the hair's going. The hair's all
really
gone for the wedding. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm at that point.
I mean, you don't have to. You're fine. You don't have to change.
Well, there's two elements of it, and the first one was. I don't want Chris to look at his wedding photos forever and be like, why is Ricky Tomlinson in my my wedding photos? And then reason number 2 is I don't want to have to look back at your wedding photos and wonder why Ricky Tomlinson is in my place.
Amazing. I mean, there is a Ricky Tomlinson vibe. It's not an insult. You look neater than Ricky Tomlinson.
Yeah, I wash my clothes.
But wow,
did you know that he used to do that on the set of
but by the way, we're talking more about Jim Royal than Ricky Tomlinson.
Yeah, Ricky Tomlinson outside of that show was a neat, tidy, clean man. But on the show Royal Family, where he played Jim, he used to throw his clothes on the floor for weeks before he'd wear them on the show. True story. Anyway,
so basically, what a movie.
Yeah, we were gonna. What we were talking about? Oh, yeah, we were talking about the narration.
Yeah, the narration. Yeah.
Oh,
So, but,
it's an interesting choice because I think these days there's like a stigma to narration.
yeah,
Like,
I agree with that.
there's like a you got narration. Like you couldn't get your exposition into your script, so you got to do narration. What I like about this is the characters aren't always very forthright with each other about how they feel about each other, what they think about each other, and the movie is pretty good at giving you that information, generally speaking. Because okay, let's just take a step back actually. Because I just want so there's the famous Blade Runner narration that's been removed from subsequent cuts. It's awful because there's a really nuanced scene where Harrison Ford does such a great job communicating the feeling of the scene, and then he tells you what the scene was. Pointless. What's great about this and what works, why this is good and that is bad, is this is supplementing. It's not telling you the thing you just witnessed. You are a clever, intelligent audience member who can work out how the characters feel about what's happening. But what he will sometimes use the narration for is to sort of like either add a different side to it or tell us more that we didn't see. It's like adding to it rather than repeating what's already there.
And I think narration always has more of a purpose in films that span a long period of time.
Yes.
So if you think about Forrest Gump, narration, very effective.
Yeah,
The
extremely.
Curious Case of Benjamin Button is her telling a story to someone, which acts as a form of narration.
Yeah, and
I think I've
in
not seen
uni
that
I
film
was challenged
for a
with
long
like
time, but-
we were challenged with like pitching a film and designing this film, and I pitched a Beatles biopic.
Yes, yeah.
And mine used a sort of narration in the format of it was an interview they were doing during the sort of Let It Be era about their career, and that was my excuse to jump through time, just to show things they were talking about.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you don't have to do like and they used the same technique in Rocket Man.
Yeah. That doesn't seem recommend, but yeah.
He's in like an AA meeting or
and-
something, and he's telling
and-
he's doing his like story, and it's going back. So yeah, it's
Good example. Bohemian Rhapsody feels like it jumps around quite a bit because it's not
You're
got
right.
that. It's
You're
not
right.
got that thing
You're exactly
pulling
right.
it together. Bohemian Rhapsody has this bizarre TV movie looking 1979 bit montage. That watching it, I was like, ooh, that, and it feels out of place. Whereas if you have Red going by 1962, I think it's
You're right.
for
You're
that
right.
reason.
You nailed it actually. So it's not just about supplemental information. I was kind of on the right track, but I think you've actually been more astute and noticed the real full function of it,
Purpose
which
of it,
which allows you to jump through time in a way that doesn't feel jarring. You're right.
and it
You're
doesn't. And
absolutely
I think I do have a soft spot. Are you cold, by the way? I've noticed we're both sat here. With
I'm not.
arms
I'm
crossed.
comfortable enough.
Okay.
My arms are crossed. This is when the mic is positioned the way it is. Arms crossed feels the best way to be.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, it's difficult for me because usually when we record not face to face, I'm pulling faces, like reacting angrily and disappointedly to what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm always like, oh, shut the fuck up. But I can't, so it's difficult
And
for
giving
me.
the mic the finger.
Yeah. I'm always like, oh, like earlier on when I was like frying some chicken, that was just an excuse to get my wanker gesture out.
That was the gesture you did. I
Checking.
pointed it out
Not
at the time.
Not deliberately.
It felt quite deliberate.
No,
very
I don't
deliberately at
think
me.
you're a wanker. I think
I
you're
think he thought-
a lovely man that looks like Jim Royal.
I think he thought my laptop screen was obscuring his hands, and when I pointed out the gesture, he was upset.
I think it works because, like, when there's a good example where he says that was the longest night of my life, and we see that, so we don't need to hear him say that, but it's a nice thing. That's what I was going to say. I think I have a soft spot for movies that travel through time. I always seem to enjoy that.
Well, it's like over a big period.
I don't know
tells
why.
someone's kind of life story rather than just a bit.
I do enjoy that. I
Can
don't know why.
we talk about the aging in this movie?
Yeah, that's one element that, because there's no reason at all to remake this movie. But watching it, I was like, God, now the aging would be more, visible there, present. They do it to some degree.
Yeah.
They do it better on Tim Robbins than they do on anyone else.
Yeah.
Some of the supporting characters, they just don't bother
Yeah.
aging up, it seems.
Yeah,
Morgan
and
Freeman.
it's
they
20
do a
years
bit.
past and they look the same as they did in 20 years ago. But with Tim Robbins though as well, apparently that he would intentionally had sleepless nights before shooting to get bags under his eyes.
Oh, wow.
As he went through production, and the reason he did that was obviously to create the impression that Andy had a double life because at night he was chiseling away. So I think some of the aging on Tim Robbins is that they gave him a slightly greyer hair and he's got bags under his eyes, but the bags under his eyes are actually not to indicate aging, they're to indicate the nightly activity of tunneling himself out. The
difference between him, Tim Robbins looks fucking good at the end, doesn't he? On that boat, fuck, you want to talk, you think guns are sexy, Dan? Tim Robbins on that boat at the end of the movie, he's got the shirt, he almost looks muscular. He's like, I think, mate.
You were so close to a compliment. He almost looks muscular.
But like he's got the unbuttoned
you're
shirt.
Saying is,
he's tanned.
What you're saying is, Shawshank Redemption era Tim Robbins is on your free pass list.
Just that scene where he's on the boat. The second he gets off the boat, we'll talk about that as well. In fact, let's go there now before I go on a Tim Robbins' hot rant. But it's a sexy scene. Great. You ache the first time you watch it because you want to see and hear their reunion.
You do, yeah.
I ached. And I ached a little bit last night, but equally I could really understand the beauty.
I'll be honest with you, I'm surprised we saw as much as we did.
I think you need confirmation they find each other.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Do we need the hug and stuff, the embrace? I wondered if
really
you could
see the hug, though, do we?
You do as the
you
camera's
see
panning
it,
out.
yeah.
For those who don't remember, so Andy tunnels out and skates, but eventually Red gets out. He finally gets approved to be out
because Andy's everything Red's been through makes him be a bit more real with the parole people.
Yeah, I didn't find that very convincing. I'll be honest.
They would go, yep.
Yeah, after that speech, no.
Not the end of the speech. The beginning, where he's like, "Of course, I regret it. I regret it. I tell me, past me, not to be so stupid." Yeah. It's the bit that ends. The fact that the speech ends, and frankly, I don't give a shit. The fact that they're then like, "Yep."
Yeah, I found that slightly not believable. It's the only part of the movie I really actually went. I remember making well, okay, that didn't quite work for me, but. So the embrace at the end, I just don't know if you need each end of the beach, they catch eyes. Sexy Tim Robbins jumps off the boat. I'm only calling him that now just to sort of appease you, Chris.
I think you need another. You can't end on Tim Robbins jumping off the boat. You need another shot because the audience will be masturbating. Cinemas would have.
I was thinking the way I would have done it is they lock eyes. So there's a shot of each of them looking at each other and smiling, and then the camera pulls out as they walk towards each other. You don't actually.
That's what happened. You're just offended by the hug.
I just think that's a bit too. That's just one moment too many.
Is that because they don't hug? Oh, it's coming down out there. Oh yeah, we lost a fence panel, as you can see, Dan.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Oh man. Storm. What are we on? Storm. There's been
Jorge, I
Storm
think.
Jorge. The 90th storm to hit Britain in the last 3 weeks.
We lost the fence panel 4 weeks ago and haven't bothered because there's no point because we can't in the rain fix it.
Yeah, there you
go. But don't worry, Dan. Global warming's not a thing.
No, it's not.
Despite there being extreme weather in every country,
it's not a thing. Australia's on fire.
Is it because
it's not anymore? But yeah.
Is it because they don't show that level of physical contact in the film do you think it jars with you?
No, I just think what
you described is what we get. It's just there's also the hug. It's the hug that you got a problem with.
Well, I suppose,
why don't you like hugging, Dan?
I like a bit more ambiguity.
What? How does the hug not give you?
It's a bit. You know what it is. I think
there's two elements to it. You like to think maybe they hugged, maybe they didn't.
Maybe they hugged, maybe they just flat out had sex there and then.
If I'd have been Morgan Freeman in that scene.
I think Jess has some competition here. Good job time travel doesn't exist. Tim Robbins from the 90s would have swept you away.
I tell you, Andy I'd have got my rock hammer out.
You know what it is? You're right. I think it's one, not really indicative of their relationship. Number one, it doesn't feel right for them. Maybe that's part of it as well. But two, I just think it's one moment too many. It's one beat too many in the flow of it. I just felt like that was the moment to pull the curtain and the credits and the end. For me, I don't know. It's just a flow of it more than anything.
Yeah.
But you're right. There is also an element of that's not the kind of relationship they had.
Yeah, I personally found it very satisfying because I think even though it's not the relationship they had, you would do it. It's like
you end it 1 second earlier, and anyone who wants to imagine that they embraced in that way can do, and anyone who's just there's just the flow of it is just I don't know.
I don't know. For me, it's comparable to when you're like a wedding or when someone at work leaves and you have that weird moment where even though you've never made any physical contact, you do hug goodbye because it's the last goodbye, or at a wedding you hug because it's a wedding. Do you know what I mean?
You definitely got wedding on the brain, haven't you?
Well, yeah, so that's fair.
Understandably so.
It's an heightened. Do you know what I mean? Like when you break it down, he got out of prison. He managed. One man crawled through shit and left prison, while the other man thought he was actually killing himself. And then the other man escaped, and instead of killing himself, decided to travel halfway around the world and get through the borders. And I mean, what more do you want to warrant a hug, Dan?
You got me.
Plus, Tim Robbins looked fucking sexy.
Jesus Christ! Right, I'm moving on to a different scene. I want to talk about quickly because this is getting silly now. I'm glad there's a table between us because I feel like I'd be feeling it brushing against my knee right now. I'd be like, Chris, keep your erection to yourself.
Tunneling through you.
Jesus. Can I talk about the scene? Can we talk about the potential, the idea that he may have committed suicide sequence? Because I think it's really cleverly done. He goes and gets the rope.
Red or Andy?
Andy.
Right, yeah.
So Andy goes in, and as a person who's seen the movie, I know what's actually happening. Red talks about it being the hardest night of his life because the last thing he'd heard was that Andy was in a really low place, and then he'd given him rope. You know, and he put the two together, but it was too late. Nothing to be done. You can't speak to him. He's locked in his cell. He has to just sit there knowing that potentially his friend is killing himself and he is feet away, but absolutely unable to help.
Yeah.
The next morning, the guards come in and everyone steps out, but Andy doesn't. Now, the reason Andy doesn't is obviously because he's escaped, but from the movie's perspective, especially if you're a first-time viewer, the premise is you think he may have killed himself. It's clever for 1,000,001 reasons, obviously, in terms of the plot, because you're essentially misdirecting the audience. They still think they're watching man survives or doesn't survive prison movie.
Yeah.
But obviously, we're now in the Great Escape section of the movie, but they don't know it yet. And it's clever on all those levels.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
The emotions, though, the way it's played, the narration, Morgan Freeman's performance, then the heart sink you feel the first time you watch it when everyone steps out but Andy Dufresne. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
One of my favourite sequences in the whole movie. And even the second time round, it's still heart-wrenching to know that Red had to go through that.
Yeah.
And there's a part of you that wishes Andy had spoke up and said what he was doing, but just for Red.
I think he wanted Red to be confident when he said he didn't know. And that's what's so effective about having Red, I imagine, because the kind of guards they are, it's not clear the timeline of it, so there could have been weeks in between that moment and then the warden ultimately killing themselves. But if they wanted to go, Red knew and put him in the pin or beat the shit out of him. It's very clear from Red's reaction to the tunnel that he didn't know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely,
and that they can't take it out.
That's a really good point.
Do you think it would? Because you kind of get it happens. And I love as well, because you don't notice until you know. The guard looks all the way around the room. And you don't notice that his eyes dart everywhere. But unless you know that's because the man's missing, you wouldn't... before he says, oh, holy hell, it's very subtle, but the guard looks everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, watching it and thinking he might be hanging, you don't pick that up when you do after
it's very clever.
Do you think it could have... Because then it cuts to them sort of walking into the room and being like, he's gone. Do you think we needed, or it would have been good to have a shot of the empty cell? And that moment where the audience go, fucking hell, he's disappeared.
I did wonder that when I was watching it. I'd have to see how it flowed, I suppose, in an edit situation. But yeah, I did feel like that would have been a nice moment.
I think so.
Well, it would have just been like the confirmation, because there's that weird moment you start to feel hopeful. Maybe that's the intention, because you start to feel hopeful that something else is going on the first time you watch it, I feel. Because you're like, oh, this isn't what I think it is, because they're not...
Yeah, I suppose doing it the way they did it keeps you as confused as the characters, which is quite nice.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're getting a view that Red isn't getting. You have information Red doesn't have otherwise. So maybe it's intentional.
And I hope that, in terms of what we talked about earlier, I hope that when the poster's ripped and the camera pans through that iconic shot of the tunnel, I would hope in the future that's the moment people go, oh, is this what's been spoofed for? Do you know what I mean? I hope the surprise is there, and they're like, oh, that's what that is.
Yeah, I hope it's such an effectively hidden twist that people...
Because I think it is a very well hidden.
It's very well constructed.
It's
you know
just
what?
difficult
I can't remember. I think maybe Nadia hasn't seen it, so maybe I'll show it to Nadia and see report back on her reaction, whether she figures it out. She's seen Community as well, so she's like an ideal person to figure it out.
Yeah, because she's seen.
Should we go talk quickly about the warden? I was a bit. It's frustrating for me that he gets to kill himself. I wanted to see him go to jail.
I was more frustrated that we didn't see the other guy cry. It's a bit vindictive, but
the guy that beat up the fat ass in the beginning.
Whilst we hear Red go, apparently he cried like a baby. You've got it. What he's talking about is there in front of us. Let's see him crying.
Yeah.
I see what you mean about the suicide.
The warden, for those who don't remember, basically the police arrive. He knows he's caught because Andy very cleverly set him up to go down for all of his crimes. For those who don't remember, because I haven't really explained this either, the warden was doing a bunch of dodgy shit, money-wise as well, which is actually what allows Andy to get a bunch of money and run.
Yeah, get like 350 grand.
Which they reckon him, I think someone I read it in the trivia, in modern day would be like 2 million.
Yeah.
Which is so it was a lot of money at the time. Because obviously it's set in the...
Yeah, and presumably he was able to travel because he had all the documents and all of that stuff. Like
very cleverly done.
Very cleverly
Again,
done.
set up without giving away. But I really would have been more satisfied to see the warden go to prison. Personally,
I think they set the character up as one that wouldn't do that. But also, I wonder if it's slightly a plot thing because it's part of the fear at the end of a story like this is Andy going to be hunted for the rest of his life? But if Andy's documents explain that he's innocent and the warden isn't there to go, the name you need to find is whatever cinnamon he used, assuming the warden even knows about that.
Yeah.
Then, because there's no...
I assume you meant pseudonym.
Yeah. There's
synonym.
I can never say the word. There's not... You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's not many ways that Andy would be hunted now.
Yeah.
With the warden dead.
Yeah. I still would have preferred him in jail, I think. Just there's something poetic.
Because I suppose actually Andy could go to prison for those crimes.
Yeah.
Forgery and fraud and yeah.
I mean, once he's out of the country, back then, the extradition was not as big a thing as it now. Once you're out of the country, you sort of you're kind of.
But I like that you're not. I don't think you really at any point go, oh shit, is he looking over his shoulder the entire time and all that stuff.
Yeah. If there's nothing else specific to speak about,
it's great. It's amazing. Let's do some trip.
Yeah, let's say it's massive recommendation. Wonderful film. You should definitely go see it if you haven't already. If you haven't already, I'm sorry that you listened to this and just have everything ruined. Let's go through it. There's so much. Andy and Red's opening chat in the prison yard, in which Red is throwing a baseball, took 9 hours to shoot. Morgan Freeman threw the baseball for the entire 9 hours without a word of complaint. The next day, his arm was in a sling.
Why did it take 9 hours?
I don't know. It's not a long scene. No. I'll get into that. There must have been a problem with maybe throwing the ball back and forth. He wasn't catching it every time or something, so they have to redo the line, or I don't know. I'm not sure. It's actually Morgan Freeman's favourite of his films. So Stephen King has a weird rule that his...
Just going back, is it right that he puts this above Bruce Almighty? Fine. We'll have to rewatch Bruce Almighty at some point.
Don't do that to me. Please don't do that to me. Sorry?
I may.
All right. I'm pretty convinced that movie's going to turn out to be terrible.
Yeah,
I have fondish memories of seeing it at the cinema, but I think it's
I saw it at the cinema with some friends and had
a good time, but not so much now. Anyway, so Stephen King had a rule about his shorts, and he said any budding filmmaker can get the rights from me for basically nothing.
Oh, wow.
So he sold the rights for this one. The full title of the novella is Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption for only $1,000 to Frank Darabont, who he'd become friends with because he'd already adapted one of his shorts called The Woman in the Room.
Right.
And that was done on basically $1.
Wow.
So he gave him the rights to Woman in the Room for $1, and then Frank Darabont started to become more prominent director. It was going to be a bigger movie, so he sold it for $1,000 on this one. He then maintained a pen pal relationship with Darabont until this movie came up, and then he considers this to be one of the favorite films based on his own work. And he never actually cashed the $1,000 check for the rights to it. In fact, he ultimately had it framed and sent to back to Frank Darabont with a note inscribed, "In case you ever need bail money, love, Steve."
Oh, wow.
So
I wonder why he didn't cash the check.
It's only $1,000 to Stephen King. I got to imagine, like he was riding very high back then.
Yeah,
making movies of all of his books.
Yeah,
like he was,
Wow,
Shining.
Yeah.
like he was and then he probably didn't need it. And again, he's friends with Frank Darabont. So
fair
I
enough.
could see that. When Andy goes to the library to begin works as Brooks' assistant, Brooks' crow Jake is squawking. Tim Robbins actually had to try and
so good this.
to time the line, "Hey Jake, where's Brooks?" because the crow would squawk over him constantly. You can't train a crow. So apparently he had to time his line perfectly by learning the bird's squawking patterns.
Oh wow.
Something which writer-director Frank Darabont has praised him for many times since. Do you want to know some alternate casting for Red?
Can we just talk Jake growing and the subtle gag of "Hey Jake" when we've seen the bird in his pocket to now being a full-on bird is brilliant.
Very well done.
They managed to age up the bird way better than Morgan Freeman.
Very true. I guess they just got an older bird.
Well, yeah, it's easier.
I'm a bit of a
I'm not
bird
saying
racist.
it's not.
I'm a bit of a bird racist. I think they all look the same.
It's I'm not saying it's clever.
Yeah, it's fair.
I'm not blinded by the cinema magic.
I think you might be.
Put him in that machine.
Alternate casting for Red?
Santa Claus. Yeah. Go on.
I'm just trying to move it on, Chris. There's so much trivia. The part of Red: Clint Eastwood,
Wow. Right.
Harrison Ford,
Right.
Paul Newman,
Yeah.
and Robert Redford. The reason being, in the original novel, Red is a middle-aged white Irishman with greying hair. However, Frank Darabont always had Morgan Freeman in mind for the role because of his authoritative presence, demeanour, and deep voice. Apparently, Red's reply, "Maybe it's because I'm Irish," is in the book as an actual just straight line, but it's a joke in this one. Played as a joke in this one. So there you go.
I usually when we do this, we go, I'd be interested in some of them. I have no interest in any of those.
No, and when we get further down and I get to the alternate castings for Tim Robbins' role for Andy Dufresne, same problem. And actually, there was someone else basically signed on to do it who had to do something else, and I'll come to that in a minute. We're not far from that one. Frank Darabont apparently watched Goodfellas every Sunday while shooting this film to draw inspiration from it, specifically their use of voiceover narration and showing the passage of time. Something you've already very astutely picked up on. Although it was never directly stated in the film, Brooks is in prison for allegedly murdering his wife and daughter after losing a streak at poker. So he lost at poker and then killed his family.
I'm glad that's not in the movie.
Me too. Jon Favreau auditioned for the role of Fat Ass. He later told Empire magazine that it was the worst audition he ever did, and it encouraged him to try and lose some weight.
Oh, wow.
The mugshot of the young-looking Red, it's attached to his parole papers, which I think is a really cool moment in the early part of the film, by the way, because it tells you immediately how long Red has been in prison. Yeah. It's very clever, very subtle. But that's actually Morgan Freeman's son, Alfonso Freeman.
Oh, cool.
He had a cameo in the movie as a con shouting, fresh fish today, we're reeling him in.
Oh, I know that bloke. I remember that.
So, and he appeared as a fingerprint technician in another Morgan Freeman film, Seven, a year later.
Cool.
So there you go. The film's initial gross is $18 million and could not recover the cost of its production. It did another $10 million in the wake of Oscar nominations, but is still deemed to have been a box office failure. But we will come back to it later because it did then have some success in home video. We'll come to that though. Alternate castings for Andy Dufresne. Tom Hanks was the main person in contention and was very, very close to doing the movie, basically all for signing on the dotted line, and in the end he committed to Forrest Gump and the shooting schedules clashed and he chose Gump over this.
Makes sense.
Other potential people that they went through in the search for Tim Robbins were Jeff Bridges, Kevin Costner, Tom Cruise, Matthew Broderick, Nicolas Cage, Johnny Depp, and Charlie Sheen.
Jesus.
Kevin Costner particularly loved the script and really wanted and gunned for it, but he was filming Waterworld at the time, and that worked out great.
Yeah, Jesus.
The rest is history of a sort. Despite being widely considered as one of the greatest movies of all time, it didn't receive a single Oscar win. It was actually nominated for 7, though, including Best Picture. Clancy Brown, who plays one of the other inmates, said that he's received offers from Oh no, not one of the inmates. Sorry, one of the corrections officers. He's the main corrections officer, other than the warden.
Yep.
Said that he received
the guy who does the
get
beating and gets arrested. Yeah.
He said that he'd received several offers from real life corrections officers to work with him, but he decided that because his character was evil, he didn't want to make him. He didn't want to be representing real life corrections officers and then be evil. Yeah. He wanted to be essentially a bad example of rather than a correct example of a corrections officer. So he actually turned them down. I think that's very, very smart. Frank Darabont decided not to have deleted scenes on the DVD release of the film because he's embarrassed by them, does not want them to be seen publicly. One of the reasons the full title of the Stephen King novella Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption was not employed is because there was a perception in Hollywood when the movie was announced that it was actually going to be a biopic of Rita Hayworth, to the point where Frank Darabont received solicitations and audition requests from several actresses and supermodels and their agents about playing the lead.
Amazing.
I love that. That's my favourite. Apparently, Stephen King said he wrote the original novella as a culmination of all the memories he had from watching prison movies when he was a kid. The opera song that Andy plays... Why is this one in here? Oh, I know why. So the opera song that Andy Dufresne plays over the loudspeakers. We didn't talk about this scene, by the way.
Oh, it's great.
What an incredible scene in the movie. He plays an opera song over the speakers.
And everyone pauses.
Even knowing it's going to get him in a bunch of trouble.
Yeah.
The same thing with the beer earlier in the movie when he gets all the guys beer, even though he doesn't want one himself. What's wonderful about this movie is how much selfless it makes Andy seem.
Yeah, definitely.
Very clever. So the opera song is... oh, God, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this right. Canza Eta Solaria, which is a Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart song. It's a song. It was Tim Robbins' idea for Andy to turn the volume up on the player during the scene.
Oh, cool.
So there's a moment when they're like, do it, turn it off. Andy reaches forward and you think he might do it and then he just turns it even louder. That apparently was improvised by Tim Robbins.
Yeah, cool.
My laptop's throwing a small tantrum, Chris. Bear with me. Oh, dear.
Oh, dear.
Oh, dear, oh, dear. To quote the Chuckle Brothers. Here we go. In the movie, Red says, I committed murder when Andy asks him why he's in Shawshank. Now, that is vague and never explored. Do you want to know what it is in the novella? And I'm so glad they cut this. Basically, he was serving 3 life sentences for murdering his wife, his neighbour's wife, and his neighbour's son. He had disconnected the brakes on his car in order to kill his wife and collect on insurance policy, and he did not plan on killing the other 2 people. It was an accident as a result of his attempt to. So he was a much more tortured character in the book because he'd obviously, in an attempt to kill his wife, had accidentally killed a young child and a neighbour. Like, it's
glad that's not getting. Yeah. Glad that's not in there.
Me too. Raquel Welch.
Do you think there's a psychological thing because you kind of know? Well, I guess at that point you forget that because at that point you don't know Andy's innocent. Is it because like in a world where you're following a guy who's innocent? Everyone else going, oh, murder, makes you kind of dismiss murder because on some psychological level you're like, maybe they're innocent as well.
It depends.
Even though he explains he's guilty.
Yeah, I think Frank Darabont has said his version of the story, the reason Red's in prison is for a sort of accidental murder during an armed robbery attempt.
A robbery that went wrong.
Yeah. And that's weirdly... Well, not weirdly. That's more forgivable, I guess, than
definitely.
Intentionally trying to kill a person. Like killing a person by accident in an admittedly otherwise...
Yeah,
you know
what?
Villainous act.
I didn't want it to happen, Dan, but I do need the loom.
We knew it would happen.
I need to nip and pee.
Do I just keep doing truth without you? That seems.
No, improvise. Talk about some of the Blu-rays we own.
I can't see them from where I'm sat.
Yeah. I'll put a pile in front of you.
Oh, Chris is about to give me a pile of random Blu-rays to discuss what are on his shelf. He's smiling quite giddily. He's enjoying this. Right, what have I got? Okay. Let's judge the Blu-rays on Chris's shelf. He made a real effort to add one to it, Zootropolis. And now he's adding Long Shot, because of course he is. So he has Long Shot. We talked about that. Zootropolis, which is a great film. Disaster Artist, which is quite a recent one. It's for a surprise for Chris to have. Live, Die, Repeat, which is actually Edge of Tomorrow. Blade Runner, The Final Cut, Blade Runner 2049, A Quiet Place. Not judging any of these. These are all pretty good. I think he's proud of this. This is what this is. It Follows, not as fond of. Moonlight, obviously wonderful. Get Out, wonderful. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He's already got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood on DVD. God, he's got Last Jedi, Force Awakens, Shape of Water. This might be an example of a movie Chris hasn't seen. that he asked for it on DVD, like with long shot, and then it came on Netflix anyway. I'm not going to keep doing this. This is horrendous. So I'm just going to stop talking and wait till he gets back, and we'll cut this out. There you go. Actually, when he comes back down, I'm going to pretend that I was talking the whole time and that I didn't at any point stop. Wait, here he comes. Wait. Here he comes. Okay. Oh, an Aquaman. Oh, what's Chris thinking? Oh.
Did you get bored?
Very quickly.
Yeah.
That was a terrible idea.
Yeah. To be fair, most of them were from Ronnie.
I was gonna say, are these a lot of these movies that you missed in the cinema and that were then bought for you to catch up on?
No, Ronnie went, I'm getting rid of some Blu-rays. So, Disaster Artist, Ronnie. Zootropolis, my request. Long Shot, me. Lived I Repeat, Ronnie. Blade Runner, me. A Quiet Place, Ronnie. Moonlight, Ronnie. It Follows, Ronnie. Get Out, Ronnie. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, me. Back to the Future, Ronnie.
Supersonic, definitely
me.
You. Aquaman.
Oh yeah, we should have done this as a game. Aquaman was bought for Jess. Ronnie, and the Star Wars were Ronnie as well.
Yeah, Shape of Water was Ronnie and Star Wars Ronnie.
Yeah, to be fair, and a lot of them I've not even seen.
Really?
Yeah.
So for anyone who wonders, who wants to know more about Ronnie, she's been a guest on our Nothing But Static podcast a couple of times. Find out more about Ronnie.
Yeah.
Christopher Ronnie, who's awesome. Yeah. We'll have to have Ron again at some point.
Yeah. In fact, most of these I've not seen, I think. Anyway.
That's worrying.
Carry on with the triv.
Right. Raquel Welch, who was in 1 Million Years BC, which is what the poster is in the movie. Cool. She's the third of the posters. She loves the movie, apparently. She's a big fan. I don't know why I put that trivia in. That's. I did try to cull this, and I culled quite a lot, but I clearly didn't cull well enough because there's still so much more. Right. In the close-up of Andy's hands holding the revolver in the opening scenes, the hands are actually those of director Frank Darabont. Yeah. Later in the film, when Andy carves his name into the cell wall, which that shot is used twice, Darabont's hands are used again for the insert shot.
Nice.
They were filmed during post-production, notably because Darabont felt only he could do exactly what he wanted with his hands in the close-ups.
Fair enough.
It worked. So
makes sense.
I could criticise that, but I'm not gonna because he's a genius. At the end of the movie, there is a dedication to Alan Green. He was Frank Darabont's agent and also a close personal friend. He died just before completion of the movie due to AIDS complications.
Oh, that's very sad.
Very sad.
It's very sad.
This was Morgan Freeman's first time narrating a thing.
Oh wow!
Thinking to his career now and how famous he is for his voice and his narration, that's pretty incredible. So unusually, they had a different tactic to the way the narration worked in this. They actually had him go in and do like a very quick recording. Like he went in for like 45 minutes and recorded all the dialogue just on a cheaper system, so they could play it on set. To help get the tone of the scenes and the rhythm of the scenes.
Oh,
so
cool.
he popped into a place in Iowa and recorded it in 40 minutes. They tried to use some of it in the final movie, but unfortunately there was a minor hiss to all the tracks. It wasn't really recorded at a professional quality. It was recorded to be played on set. And apparently, as a result, he then had to do a 3-week long recording session to get all the dialogue right. The previous one had only been 45 minutes. So
bet he was gutted.
I'll bet he was too. So I'm done with the movie, right? Sorry, Morgan. 3 more weeks. But I recorded all the dialogue already. I remember when I was doing Shawshank and I had to...
Your Jim Royal's much better than your Morgan Freeman.
Definitely is. And then I talked about penguins. Anyway, so to prepare for his role of Andy Dufresne, Tim Robbins actually spent some time in solitary confinement. He asked to be locked in solitary for a while to get the feel for it, although he did know his experience would not be the same because, of course, it was voluntary. Rob Reiner loved Frank Darabont's script so much he offered $2.5 million for the rights to the script so he could direct it. He was going to cast Harrison Ford and Tom Cruise to play Red and Andy. Darabont seriously considered this offer.
Yeah.
Because he'd only written the script to that point, unproven as a director. That seems like a... Keeping in mind, he only paid $1,000 for the rights, and that check hadn't even been cashed. Yeah. He ultimately decided, obviously, it was... his only real chance it would be one of his chances to really make something great, and by directing the movie himself, and even took a pay cut in order to be allowed to direct.
Oh wow!
The American Humane Society, I love this one. The American Humane Society monitored filming of all the scenes with the crow.
Right, yeah.
which is standard these days. They check that there's no animals being harmed on the set, so you can stick that little text at the bottom of your movie. They were not thrilled at the idea of it eating a maggot.
Right.
They objected to it on the grounds that it was cruel to the maggot. So, I swear this is true, they were required to find a maggot that had died from natural causes to feed to the crow. Then they let the crow out where it ate thousands of maggots of its own free will. No, yeah. So there you go.
Wow, fair enough.
Very strange. A natural causes death for a maggot.
Wow.
Unbelievable. After the film gained popularity, Ted Turner sold the television rights to TNT, his own network, for basically no money. Because then it was inexpensive to show, and they could show it all the fucking time. And it actually got a huge number of reruns on TNT over the years. Again, spreading its popularity. So despite it being a box office failure, while we're on that subject, Warner Brothers shipped 300,000 copies to US video stores. A spokesman in this case, freely admitted that was very out of whack with the film's performance in theaters and could have been was potentially a big risk. Making that many copies of a film that didn't do well in the cinemas. But it actually became one of the most rented videos. In fact, it was the most rented video of 1995 and one of the highest grossing video rentals of all time.
Wow.
So that paid off.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a risk.
Yeah.
Because you've already got the data.
Yeah.
Flopped in the cinemas. You wouldn't want to put that much money into
There must have been a sense building of people sort of getting hype.
Must have been. Originally there were 3 wardens in the book.
Oh, wow.
And to clean things up, Darren wants to smush them together.
Makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense to me as well. The exteriors were all filmed in a actual defunct Ohio State reformatory. God, that's a terrible word. In Mansfield, Ohio, the prison was in such poor condition that the renovations had to be made prior. Loads of renovations had to be made prior to filming, and most of the interiors were actually ended up being shot on a soundstage though, because they determined it would be cheaper to build duplicates of the interiors rather than renovate the interiors of the prisons. Wow. Nice. So the prison was in a real bad state. He wrote the screenplay on spec. Mm-hmm. So that, for those who don't know, means basically without being paid any money on the chance that he might get it made by a production company. And he didn't attempt to lift himself out of the rut of writing horror sequels, a la The Fly 2, 1989, and Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, 1987, which is, to be fair, better than the second one.
Good decision.
Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors is way better than Nightmare on Elm Street 2, so there you go. So it first received a limited release in North America on September the 23rd, 1994, just 33 theatres. It doesn't say that here, but I presume that's for Oscar contention reasons. It then received a wide release a month later in October to 910 additional theatres, but it sadly opened against Pulp Fiction.
Right.
Both movies were nominated for 7 Academy Awards, and both have gained cult status in the following years. But I suspect Pulp Fiction kicked its ass. Now, I originally was going to go through a list of all its different titles. This movie has so many titles across different countries.
Oh, really?
In different languages that translate to some weird shit. So one of them's called A World Outside. What's this one? Rita Hayworth, The Key to Escape, which, as a title...
Gives it away a little bit.
Yep. The French title is just The Escapees, which again... ruins the movie. One of them is Into the Shadow of Shawshank. In Germany, it was just called The Convicts. The Greek title is Last Exit, Rita Hayworth. Weird, but I'll go with it. Prisoners of Hope. The Israeli title was Walls of Hope. Quite a few with the word hope in it. The Mexican title was Dreams of Escape, which again, a lot of these giving away the premise and twist. The Reign of Freedom in Norway. Angel's Prison in Romania. Life Imprisonment in Spain. And The Key to Freedom in Swedish. Weird.
Yeah, very.
Weird. We've already covered that one, so I'll delete that. I tried to slip a few into the conversation so I could not have as many to do. Red cell number is 237, which is obviously a reference to The Shining. The dead woman resides in room 237, although in the book it's actually 217, but a reference to The Shining film. The movie was released... Right. You know how sometimes I complain about the trivia? So this is a new segment. It's a recurring segment that I'm finally calling a segment. Dan bitches about the trivia. I'm going to read you this as it was written.
Mm-hmm.
This movie was released the day after Friends, 1994, at its first episode. 26 people found this interesting.
Great trivia. Carry on.
That is the worst trivia in the history of anything. Time exists. Some things happen alongside each other.
Spotted a car. Looking forward to that. Carry on.
Oh, there's no cars exist this week. No, no one bothered putting there is a car in the movie, but no one clarified which kind it is. Oh, you're right. Our world famous segment "Cars Exist" is not happening this week. I did look for one. Yeah, just there was no trivia. I probably could have Googled what that car was and done "Cars Exist," but "Cars Exist" should only exist when someone felt the need to bother pointing out "Cars Exist" in the trivia. Yeah, that's definitely the point of "Cars Exist." The rock wall behind where Red's treasure is buried, it was actually built specifically for the film and stood for many years. It was built by hand by the art department. It took them several months before filming began, and this allowed for the alfalfa to grow around it and make it look weathered. Eventually, the wall was sold on eBay, one rock at a time, by the farmer who owned the land on which it stood. The tree at the end of the wall stood until it was carved in two by a lightning strike in 2011. A portion of it does now remain propped up by the pond on the grounds, but it is not really a full functioning tree anymore. I presumed killed by the lightning strike. So there are numerous deleted scenes. Despite never having seen them, we do know what some of them contain. Would you like to hear what is in some of the deleted scenes? So the sequence where the convicts find Jake's... Oh, there's a scene where they find the crow dead in a field sometime after Brooks left the prison.
That is depressing.
It is, but I guess the convicts give Jake a funeral. Because I guess the premise there was they both left and couldn't handle life outside of... Oh, yeah. Like, it's a thematic... Yeah. Because Brooks left the prison and couldn't handle not being in prison, and the idea... But they took it out. The deletion ends up providing a subtle thematic shift, because as scripted, both Brooks and Jake represent the dangers of institutionalization, but as depicted on screen, Jake ends up foreshadowing Andy's successful escape in the climax of the movie. So there you go. My laptop's throwing a tantrum again. Tommy's young wife, there was a scene where she visits him.
No, okay.
And they have a conversation which provides a more vivid illustration as to why he wants to get his GED. After Andy's escape, an unfortunate guard is sent into the tunnel to see where it leads. And when he sees the sewage pipe broken, the overwhelming odor of shit, he vomits loudly. Red hears this happen from his own cell and starts cracking up laughing. He's then sent to solitary confinement for 2 weeks, where he continues laughing, thus learning for himself what Andy, in the aftermath of the loudspeaker incident, had meant about easy time in the hole.
That I would have liked, but it would have fucked with the pacing.
Yeah, because I already think, as not a criticism but an observation, the pacing once he's escaped, getting to that final scene where Red is seeing him, that is the only point in the movie I felt not dragged, but was a little, maybe could have been a bit tighter.
That's the only bit I felt tired, actually. Yeah,
I think a little bit tighter, just a little bit tighter. Red's feeling on the 1960s after he's so there were scenes on Red's feelings in the 1960s after he was paroled, as well as a panic attack in the grocery store that was cut, that sent him running to the bathroom cubicle, that calms him down because it reminds him of the cell, because of the closed walls. Which I just demonstrated for Chris on an audio medium.
A lovely mime.
By miming a box around me. So this makes his choice to find the tree and the rock more meaningful because it runs counter to Brooks' choice. Brooke was in the same place just to take his life.
That they do. That they cover.
They cover it, though. Yeah, exactly. That's just tightening it up. Yeah. What else we got? Several similarities. Oh, this one I found interesting. So the novel Count of Monte Cristo is referenced in the movie. They make a whole thing about Alexandre Dumas and Dumas. But that novel involves a man falsely imprisoned for crime who later makes a daring escape after spending years digging a tunnel. After escaping, he acquires a hidden treasure, which he learned about in jail, and executes a plan of revenge against those who imprisoned him.
That's amazing.
That's the movie.
Yeah, very thematically similar.
Not thematically, Chris. That is the plot of the movie.
Wow.
So there's a big list. We're ending on a big list of differences. Yeah. So I'm going to try and skim through this because this I don't think is as important, but let's cover it. As the novella specifies that Andy smuggled $500 into the prison in his rectum. That's in the novel. That's how he pays Red initially with money for the thing, because he wouldn't have cigarettes going in. Yeah. How did he acquire any wealth to do that? It's It's never made clear in the film
Yes,
how he got the
fine,
money
no,
to pay
it's-
Red.
but it's
You-
also-
you don't question it,
Yeah.
but that's how he did it in the book. In the book, Andy orders a second rock hammer. I already mentioned this one. After the first wears down, this does not occur in the film. Multiple wardens, I've already mentioned this as well, but multiple wardens oversee the prison. They're combined into the character of Norton in the film. For example, in the novella, the warden who agrees to mail Andy's letters and the warden who treats him so harshly at the end are not the same person. In addition to Red being a white Irishman, the novella also gives details of the crime. The film doesn't. Obviously, we talked about that as well. Actually, a lot of these we've covered in the rest of the trivia, so maybe this was a bad idea. In the film, Hadley and his guards beat up Boggs as a favour to Andy for the financial tips, but in the novella, Andy uses the money he smuggled in to pay them to do it. He plays thugs to do it, not the guards. Tommy's story is slightly different in the book. He tells Andy his old cellmate bragged about a double murder he committed was pinned on a lawyer rather than a banker, and Andy latches onto the idea that the two professionals were commonly confused at the time. So it's actually, that means that in the book, it's a lot less clear whether
He's categorically innocent, right?
Whereas in the movie, they decided to make him categorically innocent. Tommy actually isn't killed in the novella either. He just agrees not to testify on Andy's behalf at the behest of the warden, and is then sent to a slightly more comfortable prison.
Oh, right, okay.
As like a repayment for that.
It's paid off. It's better. The film does that better.
Yeah, the murder is
Yeah.
fantastic. It absolutely makes the warden the full on the villain.
yeah.
Whereas previously, as I mentioned, he'd been a kind of antagonist, but not flat out villain. The ending received the most significant changes. The narrative Red gives of the time Andy spent in prison is different. In the novella, Andy spent 26 years in prison before his ultimate escape. In the film, he spends 19. So what the ending receives perhaps the most significant changes. Whoever wrote that then gave a not that significant change. He gets out 6 years earlier.
6 years earlier.
No one, that's
Fine.
Yeah. Oh, in addition, okay, there's more to that. Red's narrative of the story of Andy Dufresne in the memoir is written by Red.
Right.
And the second part of it is him writing it after he's escaped as well. In the... what's this one? 1 second. It concludes with confidence that he's going to travel to Mexico to find Andy, but there is no actual...
Oh, okay. Wow.
You don't see them.
That is pretty.
They don't confirm.
different.
Yeah, that's fairly different. Sorry, I've had to stop here because I couldn't put spaces in between these because the way it's formatted, and it's driving me up the wall. It's making. You've noticed that when I got to these, my reading has suddenly gotten much worse. I can't space them the way my eyes can easily read them while it's moving up and down. When Red is released from Shawshank Prison, he finds a package Andy left for him in the hayfield. In the film, he simply goes directly to it, but in the novella, his hunt for the appropriate hayfield is a fairly substantial piece of the plot.
Cool.
Yeah, there you go. In the final scene of Andy standing on the boat on the beach, he meets Red is not present in the novella, which ends on Red on his way south to meet Andy, and whether they found each other again is left ambiguous.
Glad that wasn't the case for the movie.
Me too. Now, the last piece of trivia, Chris. You'd be glad to hear the last piece.
I'm suddenly conscious that we have a suit fitting to go to. Carry on.
Yeah, I know, in like 15 minutes. Like, it's ridiculous.
Well, we've got to be in Thatcher in 15 minutes. We've got like 5 minutes. Carry on. It's fine.
Every take of Tim Robbins raising his arms outstretched in the rain was out of focus, except for the very final take.
Jesus. What, they didn't discover that until after? God.
The only usable take was the last one.
God. Wow. Okay, Jesus. Right, before Jess comes down and just stares at us, Dan.
Yep.
What are we doing next week? Take us home, baby.
God damn it. This one has been a real tough one for me because there's a film I want to do and a film that like I really want to do, but I'm not sure if it's the right time.
Right, okay.
So
why?
It's a sequel to one of the ones we've already done, and I don't know if we should do it now while it's still the other one's still fresh in our memories, or save it till later.
Oh, I don't know. Only you can decide, Dan.
All right, we're going to go different. We're not going to do the sequel.
Okay.
I'm going to save the sequel.
The sequel's presumably Short Circuit too.
Correct.
Yeah.
We're going to do Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because there's been
They've
hints
just
this week of a remake happening
with
Chris Evans.
Chris Evans
playing
and
the dentist.
Rick Moranis is now back, and
Right? What?
in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah, right.
Sequel. Yeah.
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 So like there's a bunch of stuff that's happened this week that sort of brought it back to I thought you were suggesting Rick Moranis was back in the Little Shop of Horrors remake. I was like, wait, what?
Not as far as I'm aware, no.
That would be amazing. So have you ever seen it?
Nope.
Great. I love this movie as a kid.
I'm very excited.
And I'm really excited for this one because Chris, when you finish watching this movie, I'm also going to send you the alternate ending. And the alternate ending is one of the most insane alternate endings in film history.
Oh shit! Okay,
Cannot wait to show it you.
I'm very excited.
I love this movie with all my heart. As a kid, it was just so weird and offbeat, and it was like a horror, but it kind of wasn't. It was kind of funny, but it was also scary, and I genuinely found it very scary.
I've always got it in my head confused with Rocky Horror Picture Show because I've never seen either movie. And just
Do you know anything about Little Shop of Horrors at all?
No, vaguely something from. I think it's a shop, and they grow. It's all mysterious. I can't remember.
Amazing.
Not that much.
Don't look up a trailer.
Oh, okay.
Don't even look up an image if you can avoid it.
Okay,
I'll see if I can get you the movie in a way that's
doesn't
give you anything.
We'll work that out. Cool.
Perfect.
There we go,
Great.
people.
Little Shop of Horrors next time.
Dan and I have a suit fitting to go to. Apologies for the slight rush at the end. I just suddenly went. In my head, I was like, "We've got till 1," and then I was like, "Oh, we said we'd pick up Matt at 1." And Matt doesn't live in the same town.
Amazing.
So, there we go.
So, thank you everyone for listening. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris
Come back
Billingham.
next time as we discuss Little Shop of Horrors.
The Irish version.
Yeah.
Tim Robbins in that boat, though.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
I feel you.